Thank you for joining us at the Evolution of Medicine Summit. A warm welcome. We wanted to make a specific thank you to our sponsors that have made this event possible. Energetics, an innovative natural remedy and supplement company, is committed to revitalizing medicine, and Cyrex Labs, a clinical immunology laboratory specializing in functional immunology and autoimmunity. Most of all, thank you for listening. If you'd like to share this with your colleagues and friends on Facebook if you enjoy the content, and if you have questions, you can ask us on Twitter with the hashtag EvoMed. Finally, if you really want to play your part in accelerating the evolution of medicine, ask your doctor if the Evolution of Medicine Summit might be right for them. Thank you and enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Evolution of Medicine Summit. This is your host, James Maskell, and we are here in the Paleo Evolution of Nutrition Day as part of the Evolution of Medicine Summit. And if you were listening earlier in the week, you heard me interviewing public health guru Dr. David Katz. And we had a very lively discussion, but one of the pillars that he spoke about in how to disease-proof yourself was exercise. And exercise is, something that has been part of human existence for a long time in lots of different forms. And Dr. Katz really spoke about the need for exercise to be really ingrained into your life and the way that you work. And so in order to communicate this effectively, I looked around and saw what was happening out on the internet, who was ahead of the curve with this, and I came across Darryl Edwards, who's the founder of Fitness Explorer Training. He's a qualified level 4 personal trainer. He's based in the UK. He's really interested in paleo and primal nutrition for disease prevention, health, and body composition. He wrote the book called Paleo Fitness. And the more and more I heard about Darryl from different people across the paleo world and the fitness world, just felt like this would be a perfect fit for the kind of concepts that we're trying to communicate in this Evolution of Medicine Summit. It's the evolution of nutrition today. It's my great pleasure to have here on the line today Darryl Edwards. Welcome, Darryl.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's great to have you here. So maybe as a starting point for everyone here on the line, Darryl, we could just talk about fitness and exercise in our evolutionary history and how man has interacted with exercise all the way through its existence and sort of coming up to now where we find ourselves now.
Well, James, I think it's really important to not focus on exercise, but to focus on the activity that was part and parcel of our evolution. And so looking at our ancestors, they didn't exercise. They didn't decide to dedicate some time during their day in order to do physical activity because it was something to improve, their body composition or because they recognized it was beneficial in terms of health. It was part and parcel of what they had to do to survive. So for them to get food, they had to hunt. They had to gather their food. And looking at even modern hunter-gatherers, I watched a video with the Kalahari San recently, and they would walk 6 miles to their hunting ground, then spend the next sort of eight or so hours kind of tracking the animal, hopefully killing the animal because it wasn't a given that they were able to kind of have a successful hunt, and then to carry the animal back to their village. And so there are active for 12 to 15 hours of their day in order to get food for the rest of their village. And it's remarkable how little we move today, how much we live in a sedentary lifestyle and a sedentary existence. And so I think it's really important to see movement as being integral to good health, because if we don't move, we're not able to eat. Obviously, if we don't eat, that's the end of civilization.
Yeah.
I think food is obviously seen as a given that it's a contributor to health. Food is medicine. But I think activity is an even prime, even more of a prime motivator and contributor to health than even food.
Yeah, so is it partly, it seems like it's partly due to the fact that now food is available on every corner. That means that we don't have to be as active. Is that what was sort of like the historical timeline of man's activity? Was there a time particularly where it went down significantly and never really rebounded?
I think the first kind of significant change was the advent of agriculture. So the agricultural revolution 10 to 12,000 years ago was one turning point, the key turning point whereby we were no longer nomadic. We basically decided to, we planted seeds, there was animal husbandry. We basically stayed built around a community. Our lives were based around a community and farming. And so we were, even though we were active during the farming phase, we weren't as active as we were when we were hunting and gathering. There was some success involved in the process of farming. The fact that we knew that we had a good food source that was reliable, that wasn't as arduous as our previous existence. And I think ever since that point, 10, 12,000 years ago, it's just become easier and easier for us to obtain our food. So the Industrial Revolution, whereby we could start mass producing some of these food products and food types, and it was easier to get those foods to our home. And then, we didn't have to be engaged in farming in order to get food because of the retail sector and the technological revolution about 150 years ago. And then, of course, in the last sort of 50 years, we've had, everything from the fast food revolution. We have the technological age, whereby we're really, looking at preservatives, preserving food, literally getting food now delivered to your home. You can sit in your armchair now in the internet age and literally have to do nothing apart from click a mouse, and you have access to whatever food you want. So, my supermarket who can deliver food for me, I don't even need to get out of my chair. They can come inside my house. I can show them my cupboard.
Yeah.
And they can actually place all my food in my cupboard in my fridge on my behalf.
That's amazing. When I lived in London in 2005, we lived on a fifth floor walk up, and we specifically chose the companies that would advertise that they would walk your stuff to your front door because it was five floors up. So I know exactly what you're saying. So when did we reach our all-time low, or have we already reached it? Because it seems like there's been a bit of a rebound towards fitness. The gyms started in the late 70s and 80s in America. There's been a rebound towards people doing more fitness. Have we hit the low, or did we hit the low a few years ago?
I think we have hit a low in terms of activity because there are options available to us to get fitter, to join a gym, but the participation rates are so low. So one, even if we sign up for a gym membership, we tend to do well around New Year's when we have our New Year's resolutions, and we're very keen to start a new path to good health and to fitness. But we tend to that dies down after 2 or 3 weeks, and then we don't see the gym again for the rest of the year. We tend to want to spectate when it comes to activity rather than participate. So, looking at the Olympics, 2012 Olympics in London, there was a lot of discussion around the legacy of the Olympics being a greater participation for not only children, but also for adults, seeing all of these amazing, our peers performing fantastic acts of physical achievement. That's going to encourage us to move more and want to participate in physical activity more. However, after an initial spurt, a couple of weeks after the Olympics, we're actually back to where we were prior to the Olympic Games. And indeed, I think it's a constant struggle because part of our human existence has been energy conservation. And so, if we had our food source as hunter-gatherers, then we would spend our time resting and recovering from that physical activity. Now we don't have to hunt for our food. It's very easy, and it's our nature to not want to move. I mean, it's very difficult to convince ourselves that movement is not only beneficial, but mandatory. And I believe that's the issue that we have today. We've got so much support and so many barriers to entry when it comes to movement. I was on the London Underground recently at Covent Garden. And Covent Garden Station has 193 steps, stairs of 193 steps. And as soon as I got off the train, there was a public announcement saying Just to let you know, everyone, this is London Underground. Just to let you know, we advise you to take the lifts because if you take the stairs, there are 193 stairs, and that's equivalent of a 15-story building. For your safety, do not take the stairs. And, I was kind of infuriated when I heard that message, and I decided, I always tend to take the stairs anyway, but I decided to run up the stairs
to prove a point.
As almost like as a protest, almost a proof point. And I was at the top of the stairs, kind of puffing and panting, and one of the security guards was like, "Oh my goodness, did you actually take the stairs? Did you actually, I can't believe you're coughing and spluttering. That you shouldn't have done that. It's dangerous. You should have taken the lift." And I actually said to him, I said, "Yes, I am coughing and spluttering." I said, it was pretty arduous to do that, but I feel far more alive, and I recognize its benefit for my health than for me waiting in a queue for the lift and, maintaining this sedentary existence that we're now being told in all quarters is kind of okay.
Yes.
That message of, it's not safe to take the stairs, is evident, at all corners and all quarters of our lives today.
Yeah, well, New Yorkers aren't that keen on it too. After Hurricane Sandy a couple years ago, all the buildings south of 23rd Street lost power. So if you lived any further than like the 6th Street, 6th level up, people were like moving in with friends uptown because they didn't want to walk up. I got a friend who lives on the 26th floor. The elevators aren't working. Suddenly it's a different proposition. So, you can see that this is something that's, it's important, and this is definitely an interesting topic, because how do we get this, natural movement back into our lives? I know you've done a lot of different trainings as, certifications. What's been your evolution in understanding how to actually get people to engage with this concept again?
For myself, it was, suffering from ill health in my mid-30s and wanting to find out an alternative lifestyle that was going to give me better health. And I recognized that, looking at, traditional approaches to eating, to nutrition, has to also tie into traditional forms of movement. And so everything that we did as hunter-gatherers, we weren't specialists when it came to movement. We were generalists when it came to movement. So we covered everything from walking, crawling, climbing, jumping, sprinting, carrying, lifting, carrying. There were a lot of different movement patterns that we had to do. There was just no choice in the matter. And I think as in the modern era, when it comes to fitness, we tend to focus on, even if we do take that step to go, right, I'm going to get fitter. I really enjoy running. That's what I'm going to do to get fit. So we get fixated on one form and one kind of movement pattern, such as running, and that's what we do. And we decide, I want to get better at this. I'm going to run faster. I'm going to run further. I'm going to increase my volume. And then we find out we're getting injured. We find out that our playlists are never long enough. When we go for a run, we then it has to become about competition then. So we decide, right, if I go for a certain distance, if I'm raising money for charity, then it's all, it's interesting and it's self-motivating.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's this approach, this conventional approach to exercise and fitness is partially one of the reasons why it isn't successful for the majority of individuals on the planet. Because if you're not inherently competitive, if you don't see the benefits in that physical aspect of movement, it's unlikely you're going to continue that for a significant period of time. Our willpower just will not sustain itself to give us the benefits in the long term.
Yeah.
So for myself, it was first looking at the health benefits of activity, joining gyms, spending a lot of money, believing that if I had the right type of exercise guru, that was going to lead to my success, until I realized, okay, of course, I have to do the work. I'm the person that has to perform the activity. And as well as that, I need to be able to enjoy what I'm doing. And I found that I was getting short-term benefits, short-term gain, short-term enjoyment. And it was all about the goals. It was all about the objective. It was not about the process. Now I found a way to move and to enjoy movement, which is about engaging in the moment. It's about ensuring we have a wider scope of movement patterns that lead to better health rather than just a particular fitness goal.
That's awesome. And yeah, we definitely like to get into that because I think there's going to be some great stuff in this segment today of ways to introduce that. But, you know, if you're talking about fitness and you're also talking about paleo and evolutionary concepts, people who are sort of familiar with this space would probably think that you're really into CrossFit because that has a paleo element to it, and also talks about what you just spoke about, really, that, you know, there's lots of different moves that you have to do. What's been your experience with CrossFit, and do you feel like what you're talking about here is beyond that, or do you think is within the confines of that?
CrossFit was one of the kind of fitness disciplines that I came across when I started to investigate a broader array of movement, and it appealed to me instantly. You know, it was all about functional movement. It was less about training for aesthetics and much more about your ability to do whatever it is. So not fitness for the sake of fitness, but actually to increase your repertoire and capability when it came to movement. And that fascinated me. So there was a high level of competition, yes. There was some kind of elitism because, right, I can become one of the fittest individuals in my peer group by doing CrossFit. You know, so that it ticked all of those boxes. But the philosophy behind it was probably more appealing. It was the fact that, again, we're movement generalists, not specialists, and fitness is about what you can achieve with your fitness. So I found CrossFit was enabling me, it was almost a gateway, I would say, to looking at evolutionary fitness and realizing that you need to take that outside of the gym sometimes, because even though you can prove yourself in a gym environment and with gym equipment, that doesn't necessarily transfer to movement tasks you need to perform outside of that gym environment. You know, me running up the stairs, at Covent Garden, 193 steps, there was nothing that I could do in the gym that's going to prepare me for that task. The only way I can perform that task is actually by doing it. Do you see what I mean? So there's always a point, there's always a task or an objective that you need to face where you may not have had any preparation, direct preparation, but you still want to feel as if you're capable of doing it. So that led on to other areas and looking at a way of increasing that repertoire of movement that I felt was going to be even more beneficial and wasn't going to lead to injury. So I still found I was doing the same sort of movements again and again and again. I was getting injured, frustrated. I could no longer participate in CrossFit because of the high rate of injuries. And I believe that injury is not, if you look at from an evolutionary standpoint, being injured was very detrimental. Predation was obviously going to be an issue, or you wouldn't be able to obtain food source for the rest of your family. So injuries is not something that would have been sustainable from an evolutionary standpoint. That would have been seen as that's weakness. It's not a strength.
Yeah. Well, that's when we were still in the food chain, right?
Exactly. And I believe it's still as beneficial today. You know, now we can rely on the fact we can get a lot of rehabilitation. Obviously, we can get taped up, strapped up. We can get, see physios. There's lots we can do to try and recover what we've lost by being injured. But far better than that is injury prevention. And so I believe by increasing our range of movement, we're less likely to get, kind of repetitive strain injuries, repetitive stress injuries. And so I found even CrossFit was fairly narrow in its scope of movement patterns. And I wanted to explore something even wider, even closer, and more in tune with as nature intended. And so it was very much a gateway. So I can't knock CrossFit, because if it wasn't for CrossFit, I wouldn't have kind of branched out and experimented and explored with other movement repertoires and systems and methodologies. And I suppose what I found was that, as well as increasing the repertoire of movement, it's also about gaining some intrinsic value from the movement that you're doing, as well as the health, but enjoyment. actually having a purpose, a sense of purpose when you're moving. And that way it's easier for it to become part and parcel of your life. If I leave my front door and I go for a walk, I will purposefully be opportunistic about what I do on that walk. So, it's looking at a kid, for example, if a kid goes out for a walk, you won't see a kid walking in a straight line, kind of attempting to be mindful, attempting to meditate whilst they walk, or, making sure they have a certain gait to be really efficient and optimized when they're walking. They will take the opportunity to have a look around, to see what obstacles that they can interact with, to twist and turn, to move in kind of three-dimensional planes. They will do this because they recognize that every single second of their movement practice, they want to be engaged and they want to be enjoying that. Do you know what I mean? So rather than thinking, I want to go 500 meters on this walk or walk for 1 mile, they're thinking, what can I do within this 1 mile stretch or whatever the distance is? It doesn't really matter if it's a mile and up to them. What can I do in my time of movement that I'm really going to enjoy?
Yeah.
Really going to push some boundaries here. I'm going to explore what, I'm going to risk assess. I'm going to explore what is and what isn't possible for me. That is what I believe we've lost as adults when it comes to appreciating joyful movement.
That's amazing. So was your next sort of evolution of understanding where we needed to go based on, watching children? Do you think that's something that we sort of, is innate to us, but we sort of just lose as we get more into society, we just sort of lose that part of it?
Yeah, I think it becomes, as we get older, we conform to society. And what society tells us is that play or frivolity is something that's aligned to our childhood and should be assigned to our childhood. And adulthood is all about work and performance and, dealing with pressure. All of those attributes that we associate with adulthood. And so there comes a point in time where, my children, for example, or anyone's children, anyone that has children, initially when they're just about to start that kind of path to locomotion, they're kind of just about getting on their feet or they're about to crawl, and we give them so much encouragement to move. It's like, come on, John, you can do this. Come on, just walk. Just come to me, come to Daddy. You can do this. And then a year or two after that, you're telling your kids to sit down, be still, be quiet. You've kind of built them up to become really versatile when it comes to movement. And then you're then putting them back into this place of, now you've reached a certain age. Now you've proven yourself that you can walk and you can run and you can now stand unassisted. Now we're going to put those constraints back into that society tell us is what you should be doing. And so it just gets even worse and worse as we age. That situation, those constraints become far worse. And so a playground isn't something that an adult should be involved in. Playing for an adult is playing sports, playing cards, going to a nightclub, getting drunk. That's what play is for an adult. Whereas in the animal kingdom, you look at the big cats, for example, the adults will play with their children. They'll be play fighting. They'll be teaching them how to hunt, teaching them how to actually be confident and self-confident in their capabilities as an animal, as a big cat. And, we tend to refrain from doing that with our own kids. We spectate. Again, it's all about spectating. So we'll take our kids to be coached by other individuals to be taught how to play. And even that play tends to be structured.
Yeah, very regimented. Any of these sports, yes. I just think about, I used to run cricket coaching workshops when I was like 19, 20 with my friends. And I'm just thinking about, you have to do everything in the right order at the right speed and don't mess around and don't get out of the way. And I just look back to think what the kids actually liked was, they liked the cricket, but they loved the dodgeball and the stuff where, there weren't so many rules and they could just run around. And it's so interesting that you're saying this, because I'm just starting my journey of having a daughter who's just over a year old, and seeing these kind of things for myself. And it's very, very interesting and very self-evident. Part of what I see is the evolution of medicine and part of the role of the practitioner is not so much, you could see from doctor, you could see that almost the same way, is that the doctor says you've got to conform in these very, ways, and this is what we do for this disease. And, now this evolution is towards, I'm not in control of your life, the 167 hours a week that you're not in the doctor's office. So the role of the doctor is now, we got to inspire you to want to be healthy and make the choices outside of the doctor's office that will continue to be healthy. And it sounds like that's sort of what you're talking about here with fitness, is that it's not this patriarchal system of you've got to get fit, but let's try and find a way to get people interested in actually just doing this, because if they want to do it, then they'll do it all the time, and they won't need to be knocked over the head or guilted or feared or shamed into doing it, but they'll actually just want to do it.
Yes, I totally agree. I'm totally in alignment with that. It is part and parcel of nature's blueprint for us, and we all have this desire to move. Even though we also have a desire, almost a conflicting desire to be lazy and not to move.
Yeah.
Once we actually commence movement, everyone has recognized this. It's always that once I get to the gym, once I start, then everything's great. It's just getting there is the problem. It's once I put my training shoes on and I go outside for a run, everything's fantastic. It's just actually getting myself to put on my training shoes and get out there. So once we enjoy, experience movement that we enjoy, then everything, all the boxes are ticked and everything's glorious. It's kind of getting there. And what I realize is that a lot of movements, even for myself as a child, there became a point whereby, I used to love playing football, basketball, cricket. You name it, I used to play it as a youngster. But when I look back, what was really fun for me was a time where I wouldn't be at school, I wouldn't be being coached. It would be when I was back at home, and we'd just say, "Hi guys, do you want to play cricket?" Yes. And we'd have a lamppost as our cricket stumps, or or a milk crate as our cricket stumps, and we'd have a tennis ball, and we'd either have a bat or we'd have a makeshift bat, and we'll make up the rules as we go along, and the boundaries would change, depending on which team was winning or losing, and you could literally play for hours and hours and hours. You could just continue to play. And, you'd change teams. You'd go, "Hi, guys, this isn't fair. And, okay, let's change the rules. Let's make bring the six a bit closer so we can start getting some sixes, And you realize that fluidity and that flow is what made that enjoyable. And again, I do my workout sessions, or my play-out sessions, as I call them, in a local park. And often when I'm with my groups, I've observed other sessions going on. And what's very popular now are soccer sessions, soccer, rugby, or football. We're not talking about soccer. Football, rugby, cricket sessions for very young children, 18 months and above. And they run for sometimes 2 hours. And as a parent, you kind of go, wow, 2 hours of this activity, fantastic. That my kids are getting some exercise. It's far more than what, is expected of them to do to meet the kind of government guidelines for physical activity. However, when you actually see how much movement is being done, it's only about 10 minutes out of that 2 hour period, because most of it is actually technical instruction and coaching. Very insignificant amount of that time is spent moving in relation to their sporting activity.
So learning the rules of the game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Learning the rules, learning techniques, learning how to behave in that environment, that sporting environment, is what's important.
Yeah.
And so, that 2 hour period of parents standing around, only the last 15 minutes of that 2 hour period, 10, 15 minutes of period where they actually spent playing the game. The rest of it was drills where most of the time they were standing around being sedentary. So again, this supervised instructional based play isn't necessarily providing the benefits that we expect.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. Well, look, I think we're ready for a revolution. I think people want to be healthy. I think that tide is turning where people realize that it's sort of on them to take a lot of responsibility for this. So, I know that you've been researching this and looking at this and trying it out with different people. now that you've done all of this, what is the Darryl Edwards plan moving forward? Like, what if you could see this kind of thing being like scaled out to people? What do you think is at the core of a successful, sustainable, fun, interesting fitness routine for people?
Now I focus on play-based activity. So even as an adult, I recognize that if something is fun, it's sustainable. It's easy to motivate yourself in that environment. But when I say fun or when I say play, I'm not talking about, insignificant, just about frivolity type of play. Sort of play I'm talking about is that limited. I think limited sloppiness is the phrase. Max Delbruck, he's a psychologist, and he talks about this kind of limited sloppiness whereby it's disciplined enough for you to achieve a particular objective, but there's enough room for creativity and enjoyment where you actually thrive in that physical pursuit. So it's used to describe people like Einstein, for example, or people who are geniuses but also very creative in their art form or scientific discipline. And I want to apply the same principle to movement. It should be enjoyable. That way we are going to make it something that's sustainable, and we are going to want to encourage others to take part in that because we're feeling the joy and the exuberance of that type of movement. We want to share that with others. We get all of the social benefits of doing this because we can't, you don't want to do it in isolation. You want to share this experience with others. And I believe that is a new wave of movement. And I think the fitness industry is kind of flirting with this at the moment. But they're going to recognize that the next evolution in movement is going to be basically going back to the beginning, basically going back to where we've always should have been. And that is actually learning how to fall in love with movement again, as we did as children. Yeah.
That's so interesting because, one of the things you mentioned there is getting other people to do it. And, I think another factor that will help in this movement is that people don't really want to be told what to do. They're more like to see examples of what looks fun and interesting and sustainable for them, and then they do it. And so I'd imagine that for every person that you're seeing in the park who's part of your group and you're looking over at the soccer and they're not doing much, there's probably a bunch of people who are looking in your direction saying, hey, that kind of looks like more fun, let's do it. And then, I'm sure people who are in your group are telling their friends that it's fun. That's almost the same thing that we need to have in this medical revolution as well, is that people start eating better, they start losing their symptoms, they start getting off their medication, and that is a great example to the other people in their community who see it by example rather than someone saying, look, you need to lose weight, or you need to get off your medication, or you need to eat more greens, that it's by example rather than so it's empowered rather than patriarchal.
Yes, yeah, the prescription method doesn't work. Being told that this is the way that you should have, mandated that you live your life isn't going to work. And as you say, I think it's evident by whenever I'm in the park with my group. What also always fascinates me is that very young children, when they're walking with their parents in the park and they see what my group is doing, they always stand transfixed, watching what our group are doing. And I can only imagine what they're thinking, but they're kind of looking up at their parents, kind of going, why are we not involved in this type of activity, mom and dad? Why not? And it's always amazing. You never see kids. The kids are never standing watching the soccer group or a couple of joggers running in the park. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that doesn't look fun to them.
Yeah,
they're going round and round in a circle.
Yeah, there's something, I think they connect on a instinctual level with what movement should really be about. And I think part of what they're doing is they're kind of questioning their parents' approach to, those adults are doing something that we tell you not to do. If we're crawling on the ground, for example, which is actually very challenging to do as an adult in terms of conditioning. And so if we're crawling on the ground, you can see kids going, our parents are telling us all the time to stop crawling now because we're 5 years old. We shouldn't be crawling on the ground. It's dirty. It shouldn't, it's embarrassing. We shouldn't be doing that. We're seeing these adults do this. It's very challenging. If we ask our parents, why are those adults doing it? the adults will probably say, oh, they're just being silly. They're being stupid. They're exercising, but they're not doing anything that serious. But if you actually took part in that activity, you would realize how difficult it is as an adult to do. And those kids aren't seeing the difficulty. They're just seeing it as something that's natural and base in terms of their base instinct in order to participate in. So, yeah, it's remarkable how many lessons we can learn from children, and that kind of freedom that we need to exploit when it comes to movement. And we're just so constrained and so tied into convention. We need to kind of break out of those chains and say, hold on a second, why am I watching the clock when I go to the gym when I really enjoy this activity? I went spinning. I love spinning. I went to several classes a week, but I was still watching the clock thinking, I can't wait for this to be over.
Yeah.
I survived that experience. Wow, I'm one of the spinning survivors. Why should we have to endure that to prove ourselves in the kind of fitness camp? There's something not quite right with that kind of formula. Time should actually be compressed when you're enjoying activity. 4 hours should seem like 5 minutes. I'm sure you've experienced that yourself.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So yeah, and I think unfortunately when we are exercising now, the compression goes the other way. 5 minutes appears to be like 5 hours. Why are we doing this? Oh my goodness! Thank goodness I'm doing this for charity. At least I'm raising money. Oh my gosh, the inches are gonna, I'm gonna lose inches by doing this. I'm gonna drop a couple of % body fat. We punish ourselves when it comes to exercise because we can latch onto what we see the benefits will be. We're gonna lose some body fat. We're gonna, drop a dress size. We're gonna lose some weight. We're gonna improve our body composition. We're gonna, make money for charity by taking part in this event. I'm going to beat some of my peers by doing this. That's how we can survive and maintain that mindset when it comes to punishing and quite grueling fitness, kind of strategies, whatever they may be for you. And it only works in the short term, or it only works if you're the kind of person who's a type A-list personality who thrives in that environment. Yeah. If you don't, like the majority of people on the planet don't, then you're at a loss because you don't want to be in that environment for more than a second or two.
Yeah.
And so how do I encourage someone to get off their sofa and to take part in something that is quite challenging, but ultimately isn't enjoyable? How are you going to sell them that proposition of improve your health by going to the gym and beating yourself up, to the point of nausea because it's really good for you? I don't want to be part and parcel of that sort of fitness industry. I want to be part of the industry which states that this is about being helpful, and one aspect of good health is physical fitness, and the best way to maintain that and for it to become integrated in your life is by ensuring it's enjoyable. It's ensuring that you're not doing this because you want to achieve a particular objective, but because you want to enjoy the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it, Darryl. So I'm sure there are people who are listening right now who are saying, yes, that's me. I'm not competitive. I hate the grueling gym. I want to do it. These people may have a desk job. These people may have an outside job. They may have they may be a student or otherwise. There may be, kids and others listening. What are some basic ways that you would encourage people to start this process? Are there sort of easy starting points for anyone to just start this process and see? What do you recommend?
The first step is it's a change in mindset. It's kind of, find one or more individuals that you can decide that it's okay for you to have some fun when it comes to movement. That's probably the best starting point. It's very difficult to do it by yourself sometimes, to be the fool or to appear to be the fool. But if the wisdom of the crowd, have 2 or 3 of you together, you go outdoors where you're going to get most of the benefit of activity, rather than cooped up inside as we are most of the time. Get outdoors, get some fresh air, interact with nature. is a second step.
So let's just stop there, because I think there's probably people who are listening to this now who have a couple of friends in mind. Send them an email right now, text them, tell them to listen in, tell them to listen to this audio so that they're on the same page with you. So first step is to get a crew together. The second step is to get into nature, you were saying?
Yeah, second step is to make sure it happens outdoors. So, there are a lot of benefits, physiological benefits and health benefits of being outdoors when it comes to exercise. So, biophilia is one, actually just interacting and appreciating nature when moving is really beneficial, boosts the immune system. There are a lot of benefits in doing so. So get outside, get some vitamin D, get some sun on your back, really want.
Another benefit that's not often talked about but has been a theme all the way through this summit is being the microbiome, and getting into a place where there's plenty of good germs, which is basically out in nature, is one of the best ways that you can reseed the gut most effectively. We're seeing actually from the new studies that the citizen science projects that are sequencing the microbiome, that those people that spend more time outdoors, or people that have a pet or otherwise, they have a deeper and stronger internal microbiome that helps with prevention of all kinds of diseases. And I think in a few years we'll start to recognize that that's another key reason why you have to do this outside and not in a gym where the majority of what you're breathing in is basically just toxic cleaning products.
Yeah, exactly. Stale air and toxic cleaning products. You're totally right there. So yeah, it's good. Don't wear gloves. Go barefoot if you can. It's good for earthing. It's good for grounding. It's good to get some dirt on the skin. I think it's really important. So for myself, I used to suffer from a lot of allergies and hay fever and the like, and so it was always an issue being outdoors.
Yeah.
Until I realized that was part of the reason that was occurring, is because I was always in these really sterile, antibacterial environments.
Yeah.
And the hygiene hypothesis, stating that if we have maintained these really sterile environments, it's going to prevent asthma and eczema and all these conditions that we now suffer from predominantly. But by getting outside and actually interacting with those pathogens and recognizing my immune system, recognizing that this is actually normal and natural to be interacting with these, microorganisms rather than fearing them, is another benefit of exercising outside. So yes,
it's good stuff. If you want to know more about that, on next Monday, Moises Velasquez Manhoff wrote the book about it, An Epidemic of Absence, and he's going to be talking about exactly those kind of things. So there's more to come on that. So we've got a crew, we're outside. What's the next step, Darryl?
Yeah, so we've got a crew, we're outdoors. The easiest way is to think about what you all did as kids. Rather than trying to invent a new game or to try and kind of reinvent the wheel, just think about what you did as kids. Even if you want to play sport, it might be a case of, right, we're going to play football and we're going to do it as we did when we were kids. We're going to get a couple of jumpers. They're going to be our goalposts. We're going to play, rush goalkeeper, because it's more fun when we've got, potentially got an open goal. It's really creating an environment whereby you kind of go, let's forget the rules. Let's forget the procedure. Let's just play to have fun. Let's not take it too seriously. The participation really is what's important. And I think that's probably the best way to get into this mindset. It's really bizarre where I attempt this sometimes with groups for the first time, and they'll always try to do some sort of equalization. So they'll go, all right, we've got 10 people involved. We've got six men and 4 women. So we've got to make sure the teams are balanced out. Oh, we've got somebody who's really athletic here on one team. We've got to make sure there's somebody very athletic on the other team. And before you know it, you spent half an hour deciding what the teams are going to be.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And you're then having a discussion about, who's going to be timing the event, who's going to be referee, who's going to be... It's like, forget all of that. All you're concerned about is playing as soon as you can. And I think those are the top 3 steps. You get the crew, you get outside, you pick a game that you're all fairly familiar with, and even if you're not, something that's fairly simple to get involved with. Yeah. Dodgeball is another great example. I mean, probably more of an indoor game, but if you have to be indoors, something like dodgeball is fantastic, very easy to learn, very easy to participate in. If you're outdoors playing a game of tig and tag, I mean, fantastic. No one, regardless of their fitness level, will, everyone involved is going to be gasping for air and questioning their level of fitness after playing tag for a few minutes. So, yeah, playing tag, playing football, no rules, touch football, dodgeball, those are the kind of games you want to play to begin with. Then you can recognize that there are other games that you can play if you do have particular fitness objectives in mind. So there are a lot of disciplines now catering for play-based activities whereby it isn't just about having fun. It's for myself, for example, I want to get stronger and fitter and more athletic as I age, as best as I can. And so me rolling around in the grass isn't going to be good enough for that to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There has to be some benefits from doing this in terms of improving my physical capability. As I mentioned earlier, improving my physical capability is what I want from my fitness. That's the proving ground for my level of fitness and capability. So I'm constantly creating challenges, which may be as simple as, can I climb that tree? Can I climb that wall? Can I carry my partner who's injured, in quotation marks? Using all the visualization and kind of imagination as you would do as a kid, I apply that to adult situations.
How do you get that visualization back? Because I think probably a lot of people would just think, they've lost it. I mean, one way or another, they've lost it, and they need a road to get it back. Is it just doing it and just trying things out and doing it, or is there some sort of way to sort of reimagine yourself in this process and to start to re-engage with what may have been natural in the past?
Yeah, it can be difficult for us to reconnect with kind of our inner child, and you can read my book. Paleo Fitness is a starting point if you want to read about the theory behind these approaches to better resources when it comes to play, to kind of looking at resources when it comes to play. I would say the best thing to do really is to get yourself a good bunch of friends, get outdoors, don't rely on equipment. Imagine your environment is your playground, is your gym. That's the way to initiate the process.
Well, let's get into that a little bit, because I see on your website there's you jumping onto a trash bin. There's walls, and you said you climbing walls. What are some practical things? I'm thinking if I go out on a run this afternoon, I'm gonna interact with my environment of Brooklyn a little bit differently than maybe I have in the past. So what are some things that I should be looking out for to say, hey, maybe I should jump and run along that or otherwise, because I'm sort of interested in the idea of messing around. I don't really care what other people think of me. I think I can do it by myself, or I'm at least going to try it a couple times. What are some other things that I could be doing in an urban environment like that?
Okay, so make sure you're not thinking in straight lines. It's probably the first principle. So you go for a run. Most people will say, right, I'm going to run 5 kilometers today. It's going to take me 30 minutes to run my 5K. That's my objective. Rather than thinking along those lines, you're going to say, right, in those 30 minutes, my 30-minute run, I'm going to be no respecter of distance. I don't care how long this run is. I'm more concerned about the level of interaction with the environment. So rather than just running on the pavement in a straight line, I'm going to be now looking at some railings that I can balance on, some bins or trash cans that I can jump over. There's a bench over there. I can probably jump onto it. I can probably do some tricep dips, some press ups with the bench. I can do some kind of suicide runs and short distance runs back and forth. There's a tree. I can climb a tree. I can do some pull ups on the tree branch. That's the sort of interaction that I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be as advanced people may be considering parkour, for example, free running as the way to interact in their urban environment. But it doesn't have to be that advanced. It's just a case of saying, there's an object there. What can I do based on the repertoire of movements that I know that I can do right now? So there's a bench there. I can put my hands on the bench, my feet on the floor. I can do some push-ups. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm in the gym. I do box jumps in the gym. There's a bench here. There's a bin here. Why don't I use that to do box jumps on. Of course, it depends on the environment you're in. It depends if people consider that to be criminal damage. And so, you might find a brick wall instead of a bin or a bench to do that. You need to make the decision as to what's okay in your environment, what's okay in terms of what you're willing to do, and what's okay in terms of what people around you find acceptable. But that's what I now do. I've done this for myself for quite a number of years. My clients and my groups, performing, look at this in exactly the same way. And once they have this, once you've recreated that, you recognize it's always been there. You just suppressed it. That's all it is. It's been suppressed because you've wanted to pay some money to go to a gym, nice sterile environment with air conditioning, MTV on the TV, sauna, steam room. That's what you have to do to encourage yourself to go to an environment to get fit, whereby you can just, open the front door and look at your immediate environment as your gymnasium. And then you've almost got an infinite array of activities you can perform. I mean, the great thing about this is you will never, ever run out of ideas. You will never, ever run out of equipment and possibilities when you have the mindset of viewing your environment as your gym.
That's amazing. Well, I think that's so valuable as well, because I think, a lot of people see the gym membership or otherwise as a financial burden, and that it's not going to be something that they can't get fit this year because, they have to pay off this or do something, so they can't join the gym. And so that's like another level there. I mean, I've, in my life, had almost every excuse in the book come up in my head as to why I'm doing it and otherwise. And I'm sure I'm not alone with this. But it's certainly, even just listening to you speak is engaging something in me. What do you think are there external benefits outside of the fitness from getting yourself in a mindset where you're looking for those sort of opportunities outside of just the physical aspect? Because it seems like looking for opportunities to engage with your environment and so forth, this is a healthy behavior irrespective of fitness.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur now. And I left a very comfortable and very financially rewarding career to do what I do now, with a significant drop in income. But this mindset, I kind of recognized that, in the environment that I was in before, working in finance, working in technology, it was very constrained. Everything was about constraints. Everything was about procedure and protocol. There was very little creativity. There was very little play. Everything was serious. It was all about work. And so I recognized that I was taking all of that elevated stress and pressure and then taking it into gym with me. So I was literally going, right, I want to manage my stress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to beat myself up again in a slightly different way, but achieving exactly the same objective of being constantly stressed and pressured, and never feeling kind of any sort of relief from the environment that I was putting myself in. And I now recognize that this play-based state, as you say, isn't just about the physical benefits. My mindset is now transformed. My approach to health, my approach to food has also been transformed by this play-based state. And the benefits are wide-ranging. So there are physical benefits, there are health benefits, but part of that comes by being able to now manage stress. So, in terms of physical stress, I put myself sometimes in very, very, very difficult, physically stressful situations because I want to determine if it's possible for me to do it or not. And what I've kind of learned from this is I'm now much better to risk assess. I'm now much better able to say, you know what, today I am not physically capable of performing this task. And it's okay to back away and say, no, I'm just not ready. It's okay to do so. And at other times, it's okay to push myself a little bit further and say, yeah, today I feel capable, strong enough, well enough to be able to perform this task. Let's see if I can do this or not. And there are no penalties if I succeed or fail. It's all progress. And I suppose that's one of the benefits of play, whereby whatever you do, it's always beneficial. And that's why a kid will always attempt to get up again when they fall down, when they're learning to walk, because it's always going to be progress for them. Do you know what I mean? There's never there's never any defeat.
Yeah.
There's never any defeat to the point where they go, I'm never going to do this again. you know,
Yeah.
they will continue, and with all that frustration, they will continue because they recognize it's something that's going to be beneficial for them in the long term. So yeah, it's there's lots of good psychology on play, on the benefits of play. And I didn't start out that way. It was just purely about enjoying fitness to begin with. But now I recognize that it really permeates every other aspect of my life, and it's transformed the way that I view my existence on the planet.
Yeah.
And what I can do to help others, and how I can actually help myself by having this kind of play-like state.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and I deal with people all the time who have sort of left their job. I did the same thing. I left my job in 2005. I moved to America, and I started being an entrepreneur too. I see that movement in society of a lot more people working for themselves and choosing to do that because they get to make the decisions and they get to sort of play in their environment, in their work environment as well. And one of the things that we're going to be offering at the end of this summit is basically a career track to be able to have a more interesting and playful work. There are doctors that are looking for health coaches. We get a lot of doctors on here and working together to help people with fitness or health. I could see these kind of programs being driven from and finding your crew based in a doctor's office. I think that it's what you're really saying here is that we can really take the shackles off what's appropriate in society and really start to engage with what we really want to do. And I think if more and more people do that, they'll see that what they really want to do is to serve others and help other people, start by serving themselves, and find a way that they can actually engage with their fellow man to make the world a better place. And I think that what you've offered here is just a good starting point to start that, because I would imagine that if someone just started doing this and they had a regular office job and it sort of inspired them, it might be the kick that they need to jump and do something completely different. And it sounds like we both have a story in common that as soon as we kicked the habit of having the corporate job, our lives transformed in a way that that we never could have imagined sitting behind the desk.
Yes, for sure. I mean, it literally is priceless, the opportunities that are available when those shackles are no longer there. And I totally believe that, look at the success of some of the big tech companies, like Google, and they try to create this play environment in their workplace now. They're doing this because they recognize the benefits. They recognize that their development teams are far more creative. They're far more successful at delivering solutions when they can go and play table football, for a couple of hours and then come back to their desk and work. And but even then, it's trying to create this environment within the constraints of you have to deliver. It's about performance. That's what it's really about. And so for some of those individuals, they're only going to feel as if they're playing when they have that half an hour break playing table football. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas the reality is you can have that coexistence every single minute of the day. You're still delivering, you're still producing, you're still performing, but it's permeated. There's a complete integration of play with that coexistence with work. Absolutely. And so, I'm sure you remember back when you were in the corporate environment, people talking about this kind of work-life balance. So for me, it's a play-life balance. That's what it is now. It's like, I'm serious about play. I'm serious about what I do. So I'm still achieving all of those, characteristics of work that I would previously have assigned to work. But I'm also now living my life. And that's one and the same. Whereas before it was like, whatever I do at work is work. And then when I finish work, at 10 o'clock at night, then I can start. Then I can start to enjoy life. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
No, yeah. I mean, my core goal was to just have one life, not two lives that were separated: work life and home life, and trying to fit as much fun into the home life because work wasn't fun, and that was a decision that I made. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not glad that I did. And I really appreciate you bringing it up in such a coherent way. And I really had no idea in which this interview would go. I knew that the basic concepts of what you do, but I'm so happy that it's worked out this way, because I think hopefully it's a call to arms for people to just say, look, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We got a lot of work to do to evolve medicine. Our goal is to accelerate this evolution, and I think you've laid out some great starting points here today, Darryl. I really appreciate it. I've given every guest on this summit an opportunity to just talk, share. If we talk about the evolution of medicine, that's what this concept is about. We've seen that medicine is coming a lot more into our daily lives, or it needs to stave off and avoid chronic disease. What are just to finish up today here, what are your thoughts on, if I say the words, the evolution of medicine, what does that make you feel? What does that bring up in you?
I suppose the evolution of medicine is, we've got to look backwards to move forward, is what I believe. And I think at the moment, convention tells us that if we rely on scientific discovery and on technology and forward-thinking research, we'll kind of find the solutions to life's ills, to chronic lifestyle disease. Whereas if we actually just take a step back and even just look at those words, chronic, lifestyle, and disease, if you look at those three words, we recognize that chronic means there's a significant period of build-up in order for it to occur. It doesn't just happen overnight. Lifestyle, it's based on our lifestyle choices. Disease, because our life is not in kind of concurrent with ease, with good, healthful decisions. And so we have to take the best of the past and meld that with the best of the present in order to make the right sort of decisions. So I think this evolution of medicine is really taking all that we can do in our lifestyle in terms of prevention and making sure that's evidence-based today, based on what we know now with science and technology, and making that a reality. And once we recognize that we ourselves can empower ourselves for better health, is a step in the right direction. Just to finish my point, I've been reading a lot about the kind of wisdom of the ancients, and everyone from Hippocrates and Avicenna, who were the first kind of physicians, recognized physicians from the Western medical sense. And physicians back then, several thousand years ago, would prescribe exercise for treatment. I mean, quite fascinating. Imagine today going to your GP and your GP not just saying, oh, you know what, if you did a bit of exercise, that would be beneficial. But actually your GP saying, you need to do, 30 minutes of X and Y and Z a day in order to prevent and to cure this, current ailment. And, I think that almost kind of basic approach to health is what we need to get back to. If you do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other, remove toxins, improve your food choices, make sure activity is integrated in your life. Do you know what? Majority of the issues that you have will be erased just by doing those simple things. So the evolution of medicine, I believe, is going back to basics, having some simplicity, as well as melding that with the best of what we know today in terms of advancement in technology and the best and good science.
That's great. Well, you've been extremely eloquent today with your description of this, Darryl, and I really hope that that what we've done here today ripples out, and I can certainly see potential for this to be a really important part of the future of medicine. As we said, we've had public health gurus on this summit talking about the importance of exercise. Obviously the exercise strategies that we have now are working for a small percentage of the population. We really need to engage everyone into it. And I think some of the principles that you shared today are a perfect starting point for that. And thank you so much for sharing that. This has been the Evolution of Medicine Summit. This is James Maskell. This is the Evolution of Fitness with Darryl Edwards, and you can find out more about him at thefitnessexplorer.com. His book is Paleo Fitness. It's been such a pleasure to have you on here today, Darryl, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Cheers. Thanks very much, James. It was a pleasure.
All right, take care.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.